All right, so today you'll be learning about meiosis, which is similar to mitosis, but it's different. It's a different process, but it also has to deal with the cell cycle. I'm going to go into all that, but first, the assignments that you have to get done. So after you watch the lesson, after you complete the assignments, you're going to have a quiz right here, and you're going to have an ed puzzle. You can get these done whenever you have extra time, third period. But if you're following along, I'm going to try to make the notes session real quick. And the worksheets, I'm going to go over those with you. So the two worksheets that you get should be pretty easy to complete if you just watch the video. But after that, you have this video right here, a second video, but this one is an ed puzzle. So it's going to give you questions. And then you have a quiz, quick and easy right here. Now, I had received about 7 emails asking for extra credit. For whatever reason, if you need extra credit, I'm going to start posting these. I don't know if I'm going to do it twice a week or just once a week. But if you need any extra credit, you can go right here. It's going to take you to a blue kit. If you get this screen, you can just click right here. And that'll get you some extra credit points. Or I'll replace, a missing daily with the 100 if you have a 0 or, a felon quiz grade. All right, so if you have your journal, that'll be perfect. If you don't have your journal, you can go grab it really quick. If you're one of my students who does not have a journal at all, on the very back of the 2 pages that you get, there's blank space. You can write on that. So the title of your notes is going to be meiosis. Meiosis is right there. You don't really have to write the chromosome part, but you should know what chromosomes are at this point. So hopefully you just thought to yourself that chromosomes are basically bundled up genetic material, and that genetic material in eukaryotes is found in the nucleus, and for prokaryotes it's floating in the cytoplasm. Now the topic is meiosis. So meiosis is very similar to mitosis, except the end product is going to be different, and it's related to sexual reproduction or the production of offspring. All right, so the first thing I want you to write down is this term, but I know we went over it back when we talked about like natural selection and like the first semester material. But the first term I want you to write is gametes. So a gamete, it's a cell that has a half number of chromosomes that a body cell has. So right here in this picture, we're looking at gametes. This is the male gamete that we talked about when we talked about flowers and pollen. And this is the female gamete, the egg. So gametes are just reproductive cells. Now, when we get into what gametes are, you're gonna see this again. But gametes have a half set of chromosomes. So animal cells or all cells are what we call diploid. So I'll write it right here. You can add this to your notes. So normal cells are diploid. Bet y'all are glad I'm not writing this instead. So diploid, that means that they have a full set of chromosomes. Move this over. Now, reproductive cells, I'm going to put gametes, have a half set of chromosomes. All right, so there we go. Add that to your notes. And one other thing, these are called haploid. So if you ever see the term haploid, I want you to think half set. Diploid, think of die or dice, 2. Haploid means half. So I'm going to ask you a question. Let's just say a human has 46 chromosomes. How many chromosomes would be in a human gamete? And of course, I can't hear you, so the right answer should be half of 46, which is 23. All human reproductive cells should have 23 chromosomes. Now, what happens is these gametes come together to make a new organism. Those chromosomes combine. So in this picture right here, let's say this egg was fertilized. The egg has 23 chromosomes, and the sperm has 23 chromosomes. They come together, and an organism is going to be formed that has a total number of 46 chromosomes. Okay, next. You have two types of cells, or all organisms have two types of cells, all eukaryotic organisms. I can't even say that because you do have some single cell eukaryotic organisms. All multicellular organisms have two types of cells. Body cells, which we learned that body cells are called somatic cells, and then gametes. These gametes are reproductive cells. So, really quick, in your journal or on your sheet of paper, you should write body cells are called somatic cells. Somatic. If you see that word on the test, you should not be afraid. Somatic, that's just a body cell. A somatic cell is going to be reproduced through mitosis. Now, germ cells, on the other hand, are gametes. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this word yet, but your gametes are the reproductive cells. So here they are right here. So go ahead and add those to your notes. And the important part about gametes is gametes have DNA that can be passed to offspring. So on your paper, write the first part. Body cells are called somatic cells, so write this first bullet. And then you can write gametes are sex cells or reproductive cells. And gametes have DNA that can be passed to offspring. So looking at these pictures down here, I don't know why it's missing the picture of the egg. But anyways, the egg was on the previous picture. Right here, these are muscle cells. So you should be able to look at muscle cells, or if you hear muscle cells, you should know that muscle cells are somatic cells. These are reproduced through mitosis. Now, reproductive cells, on the other hand, are made through the process of meiosis. Okay, moving on. All right, your body cells have 23 pairs of chromosomes. And what you see over here is what we call a karyotype. You might see that word somewhere. I'm sure you saw it on your practice star that you just did. I'll type it out. I'm not trying to go to the app store. I'll type it out. This is a karyotype. Now, what a karyotype is going to show is all of an individual's chromosomes. So this is a karyotype. It's basically just a map of chromosomes. Okay, so homologous. So basically, you get each of these chromosomes come from a parent. So 23 from mom, 23 from dad, and they line up and they give you your traits. Now, we learned about protein synthesis last week, so don't forget all of that. The biggest part about biology, about being successful in biology, is being able to take everything that you've learned and tie it together. So you should be able to go into your mind and think, okay, chromosomes contain DNA. That DNA can get synthesized into RNA, which will go into the cytoplasm, attached to a ribosome, and get read as codons 3 bases at a time and be made into proteins. Those proteins become the physical traits of an organism. Don't forget that. Anyways, moving on. Sex chromosomes. So the X and Y chromosomes determine the sex of an animal. So an X and a Y, that'll be a male, and an X and an X, that'll be a female. So with that, each time a cell is going to go through a process of making a gamete, a female can only make one type of gamete because they have 2 X chromosomes. Now, here is why the male determines the gender of the child. These cells, so when you think about this, the part that's circled, you'll kind of understand how all these chromosomes work. When this goes through the process of meiosis, it's basically going to divide these into one cell. So instead of doing through mitosis, where you have a complete copy, all of these chromosomes are going to go through a process of division and line up. Now, one cell that a female makes is going to have, a female is only going to make one type of gamete, a reproductive cell. A female is only ever going to make 2 X chromosomes or an X chromosome in the reproductive cell. But a male can make an X and a Y cell. So let's just say a male has a reproductive X cell and it goes to another reproductive X cell, it's going to be a female. If the male has a gamete that has a Y cell, it goes into the X cell. So the XY is the male combination. So this is why the male determines the gender of the child. All right, so body cells are diploid. We just went over that, so you should already have that in your notes. I'm just going to read over it. Body cells are diploid, gametes are haploid. Fertilization between egg and sperm occurs in sexual reproduction. The diploid cells have 2 copies of every chromosome. So now you're seeing this for the first time. Well, I don't know if it's the first time, but now you understand it. Sometimes you see this connotation right here where you have a 2N. That 2N basically means that you have 2 copies of every single chromosome. So you have a pair for every chromosome, so a total of 46. Just know that all body cells are diploid, so skin, hair, muscle cells, heart cells, brain cells, blood cells are all diploid. They have half of the chromosomes from each parent. So in a typical body cell, half of your genetic material comes from one parent, the other half comes from the other parent. So it's nothing to write on the previous slide. All right, haploid cells. Haploid cells have 1 copy of every chromosome, and you already have this. If you have a highlighter with you, go ahead and highlight it where you wrote it. Gametes are haploid. They have a half set. All right, gametes have 22 autosomes and 1 sex chromosome. So that's that 1 sex chromosome that determines the sex of the child, and I just talked about that with the X and the Y chromosome. The autosomes, by the way, are just body cells or somatic cells. All right, the chromosome number must be maintained in animals. Many plants have more than 2 copies of each chromosomes, and it's kind of weird. I think I saw that a banana, they determined a banana had in a cell had 6 copies of each chromosome. Plants get really weird with the genetics. But remember, if I was in class right now, I would ask you, what's the one thing that all organisms have in common? And you should be able to say that they all have A, T, G, and C that makes up the genetic code. Yada, yada. If you don't know that, we're going to have to do some review. Now, mitosis and meiosis are types of nuclear division that makes different types of cells. Mitosis makes more diploid cells. Remember, diploid means you have a double set of chromosomes. It's not for reproduction. What are the four reasons that cells go through mitosis? You should be able to say for growth, number 1, repair, to replace dead cells, regeneration. You should be able to say these things. All right, now meiosis, here we go. That term again, haploid. When I get back, if I ask you what haploid is, I'm expecting you to know it. Meiosis occurs in the production of sex cells, and meiosis is going to produce gametes, and gametes are those reproductive cells. Here's how meiosis works. This is also kind of what's on your worksheet. It produces genetically unique cells. It results in haploid cells. Now, the biggest part about meiosis is that the cells that are produced are genetically unique. So now this is where I need you to pick up your pencil, highlighter, and write this. Write meiosis produces genetically unique cells. This is why no matter how many children a couple has, they are all going to look different. They're all going to be genetically distinct. They're not going to be identical. Even twins have slight genetic variation, but I'm talking about brothers and sisters. No matter how many children a couple have, there's this process that occurs in meiosis that's going to produce genetic differences. So it's important that we have these genetic differences. So write genetically unique cells. So that's the whole purpose of sexual reproduction. We don't want to reproduce like bacteria because bacteria normally just clones and replicates itself. So all we have to do is take one chemical and we kill 99.99% of that bacteria. But when you have sexual reproduction, you get this thing called diversity. So somewhere on your notes, go ahead and write that meiosis leads to genetic diversity. Highlight that. That's important. That's what they're going to be checking that you know on your STAR test. Do you know that mitosis does not lead to genetic diversity? And if you know that meiosis does lead to genetic diversity. Next slide. All right, now the process. So here's that picture again of fertilization. Excuse me, sorry, I was cracking my knuckles. During meiosis, diploid cells undergo two cell divisions that result in haploid cells. All right, cells go through two rounds of division. Now this part, I'm not expecting you to know this word for word, picture for picture. You need to be familiar with the process of meiosis, but you don't have to know every single stage, every single step. Now, where you do have to know that is for mitosis, which you should know G1, and then you should know that S phase and G2 are all part of interphase. Interphase takes a long time. And then you go to mitosis, PMAT, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, cytokinesis. If it does not sound like I'm speaking English, you have some knowledge gaps that we have to go back over. So make sure you know all that stuff about mitosis. All right, so now, meiosis and meiosis 2 have four phases similar to that of mitosis. Pairs of homologous chromosomes separate in meiosis 1. Homologous chromosomes are similar but not identical. Sister chromatids divide in meiosis 2. Sister chromatids are copies of the same chromosome. So when we have these 23 chromosomes, we have chromosome 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 23. And each chromosome is going to have a pair. Now, this part right here is what I want you to write. I want you to write that crossing over occurs in meiosis. I'll type it out. So, crossing over and is responsible for the production for the production of genetic diversity. So if you ever are faced with a question or anything that's asking you why meiosis or how meiosis produces genetic diversity, this is your answer right here. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so crossing over occurs in meiosis and is responsible for the production of genetic diversity. If you look at the picture, when we have these two cells that come together, so let's just say a cell has just recently been fertilized, you have a half set from each parent. Now what's going to happen is when that cell is fertilized, the parent cells are going to replicate themselves. And after they replicate themselves, they cross over. This crossing over right here is why grandchildren look like their grandparents in a mix of everything. That's because these two cells that make up an individual, they come together and they cross over. So now every cell that you have is going to be a mixture. So this part right here, this crossing over, is very important for the production of that genetic diversity. All right. So here are these are the technical phases. Now this is where that worksheet is gonna this is the part that's gonna help you out with that worksheet. So on your worksheet where you have the second blank on the very first page, you have prophase 1. After prophase 1, you have metaphase 1. Now this should look slightly familiar. PMAT, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, except it occurs twice in meiosis. So for the second phase that you see right there, go ahead and write metaphase 1. All you have to write for metaphase is that the spindle fibers are going to align the chromosomes in the middle, or you can write the word equator. The spindle fibers align the chromosomes in the middle, almost just like it happens in mitosis. And then anaphase should look familiar. So anaphase 1. The chromosomes separate and move to the opposite sides of the cell. Remember, Anna gets mad at her sister, so she splits. They look like A's. A's are moving away. Whatever you use to remember this, go ahead and make that. Write Write it down. So anaphase 1, chromosomes move to opposite sides of the cell. And then telophase 1, the cells begin to separate. Remember telophase, telescope, two eyes, television, whatever. That green poster that's in the back right or the front right of the classroom. So telophase. Looks like two eyes. All right, moving on. Now down to the second part. So you should have already guessed. So after telophase, I said everything's going to happen twice. You have prophase 2. So prophase 2. The basically you can just say the it says centrioles, but just put the what's the best way to write it? You can just say that the nucleus dissolves. Like the part that I don't want you guys to think is that the nucleus fully forms. Just put that the nucleus begins to dissolve. Let's just put that. Or continues to dissolve. All right, and then metaphase 2. Metaphase, still the same thing. The chromosomes line up in the middle. And then anaphase, same thing. Sister chromatids separate. And then telophase. Now, this telophase is going to look slightly different. Now, since we have these two cells, and these two cells are undergoing this process of division, we end up with 4 genetically distinct daughter cells. I'm going to type out what I just said. So, hopefully for anaphase 2, you have it already. Now, we're in telophase 2. I want you to write. So, telophase 2. I'll draw an arrow to it, or try to at least. So telophase 2 results in 4, not 2 genetically identical, but 4 genetically unique daughter cells. So that's the end result of telophase 2. So I would prefer that you write that in that box at the bottom of the page, of that first page. So at the bottom of that page, I want you to write this: telophase 2. It results in 4 genetically unique daughter cells. That means that each one of these daughter cells are slightly different. They're a mix of every parent's DNA. I saw a picture online yesterday that said that basically if you go 8 generations back, so your great grandparents, we all have 2,000. I want to say, I might be wrong, but the number is like 2,048. That many greats. So 2,048 people's genes had to combine to make you who you are right now. So all of that genetic material is still there. And when we go through this process of telophase, each one of these cells is genetically distinct. I think I saw a woman that had, and this is like in the early 1900s, she had like 19 children. 19. Each one of those kids looked different. I mean, they look similar, but they were all genetically different. And that's the whole purpose of meiosis. All right, and this is just going back over. If you can take a mental snapshot, this is the most important thing. That quiz that you're about to take, if you can just realize these 2 points, you'll be okay. Seriously. Diploid versus haploid. One is going to happen throughout an organism's life. One happens only for reproduction. This one is asexual. Meiosis is sexual reproduction. This one ends in 2 genetically identical daughter cells. This one has almost the opposite, 4 genetically distinct or unique daughter cells. All right, haploid cells develop into mature gametes. And here's a new word. So we already know what gametes are, but this term right here, gametogenesis, that's the production of gametes. So all this stuff is, I mean, if you're interested, you can read it, but as far as a test, you're not really going to be expected to know about it to this extent. All right, so here's your worksheet. So the first part we've already went over. If you kind of missed it, you can go back, skip back, and just listen. I told you what to write for right here. First page is very simple. All right, when you flip over to the back, all you're gonna have to do is do your best. I'm not looking for you to be Picasso. I know some of you are perfectionists, and I appreciate it. Um, but I don't want you to spend all of your time trying to do this. The most important thing that I need you to know, so your best picture should be at the end of telophase, and this should be telophase 2 right here. But at the end of telophase 2, if you can go ahead and draw like an extra. Make sure you have telophase 2 right there. But anyways, at the end of telophase 2, you end up with these 4 genetically distinct daughter cells. So, what do you do for this one? Flip back. Flip back to right here and just redraw it. It's that simple. If you don't feel like turning back, you can pause the video right here. And for metaphase 1, you draw that. Anaphase, you draw that. Telophase 1, that. Prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2, and then telophase 2. It's simple as that. I'm not grading you on how well you can draw these squiggly lines. All right. Now here, down here. What is the diploid number for the cell versus the haploid number? So the diploid number for the cell, that's a full set. So I would write either 2n right here. Write 2n like we saw earlier. Haploid number, just write the lowercase n. All right, so here's the tricky part. Number 2, how many daughter cells are produced at the end of meiosis 1 and at the end of meiosis 2? If you look up here, it shows you. So at the end of meiosis 1, remember we end the cell cycle with cytokinesis. We have 2. And at the end of telophase, or at the end of meiosis 2, we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. So meiosis 1, we have 2. Meiosis 2, we end with 4. All right, during what phase do homologous chromosomes separate? During what phase do homologous chromosomes separate? All right, so homologous chromosomes are going to separate during the first anaphase. So anaphase 1. And the individual chromatids, that's going to separate when we get into anaphase 2. All right, during which phase do homologous pairs line up along the middle? The homologous pairs line up along the middle in metaphase 1. All right, and crossing over. Crossing over is going to occur in prophase 1. So right here, you can even you can draw an arrow to it. That crossing over is a crucial point in the cell cycle. Well, the meiotic cell cycle. That crossing over, that's where these cells are going to basically become jumbled, and all the DNA is going to be shaken up like dice. It's like playing the genetic lottery. All right, now for your other page. All right, so when you're naming these phases, basically just you can look at these pictures, or you can use your prior knowledge about the cell cycle and put it like that. So homologous chromosomes pair up and form a tetrad. So whenever you have these cells that are pairing up, forming this quote unquote tetrad, that's basically just them lining up in the middle. So you could put metaphase. All right. The spindle fibers move the homologous chromosomes to opposite sides. That's going to be anaphase. Now, this one I expect you to know because we're talking about the 4 daughter cells. So already you should be able to say that this one is, what is it? I'm just kidding. Telophase 2. Yes, telophase 2. All right, now this one, chromosomes line up along the equator, not the homologous pairs. This is going to be metaphase 2. All right, crossing over, that's prophase 1, where you have the chromatids separating. Now, these chromatids, this is where you don't have a full chromosome. So in these first stages, you have like a full chromosome. But down here, when we get to the second stages, that's where we have the chromatids that look more like that. That would be more of a chromatid right there. But anyways, where was I? Chromatids separate. That should be anaphase 2. All right. Homologs line up along the equator. Go ahead and write metaphase 2. And this one right here, where we have the cytoplasm divide and the 2 daughter cells that are formed, that's going to be telophase 1. Telophase 1. All right, so let's go through these pictures. So starting from the beginning, this first one right here, we see that we have one cell. I'll go back and show that anytime you have one cell, so like prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1, and when you have about to have 2 telophase 1, that tells you if you're in the first part of meiosis, meiosis 1, or the second part of meiosis, meiosis 2. So right here we have one cell. The chromosomes are moving away, or the chromatids are moving away. So we should know that in this first picture, this should be anaphase 1. This picture, we're starting to divide, but we're dividing, actually not divide, but we're moving away, but we have 2 cells. When we have 2 cells and they're moving away, anaphase 2. Anaphase 2. So we have one cell, the nucleus is dissolving. Remember, whenever we have the nucleus dissolving, that's going to be prophase. But this one specifically is prophase 1 because we have this one cell. And also right here, if you look really closely, you can see the process of crossing over occurring. That's the chromosomes that are overlapping and they're shuffling up that genetic information. All right, this picture right here, we have one cell. They're aligned in the middle. That's going to be metaphase 1. This picture, we have 2 cells and they're aligned in the middle. Metaphase 2. This phase right here, we did have one cell, but now it's becoming 2. Remember, telophase looks like 2 eyes. So that's telophase 1. The last 2. Right here, we have these chromosomes. They're about to get ready to line up. But now we have these 2 cells. This would be prophase 2. And the last one, the most important thing that I need you to know, is that the end product of meiosis is going to be these 4 haploid genetically unique cells. So for 8, telophase 2. That's the end of the worksheet part. So now that you're done with that, you're going to pop over to Schoology. You have a video to watch over it, some questions to answer, and you have this quiz right here. And then if you have some little extra time, you can get your extra credit. I think it'll show you the due date once you click on it. It's not that hard. This one is going back to cell transport. Remember, if you have any questions, just go ahead and email me. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I know some of your peers are not focused, but as long as you made it to this part of the video, I'm proud of you. You're doing what you need to do. All right, see you next time.